The lone rancher waited for his mail-order bride, and a woman twice his size stepped off the wagon. The red dust swirled across the vast plains of Mars, painting everything in shades of orange and brown. The wind was strong, and the sky was a pale, dusty pink. Jonas, a lone rancher, sat on the wooden porch of his small Martian cabin, staring out at the horizon. His fingers drummed against the railing as he watched the land stretch endlessly in all directions. It had been months since he had seen another human besides the occasional supply drone, and loneliness had begun to settle in like a heavy stone in his chest. Jonas wiped the sweat from his brow. The sun's light felt sharp, and the air, though breathable, was thin. He had grown used to the isolation. Life on Mars was not easy. The soil was rough, the crops struggled to grow, and every day brought new challenges. Still, he had a purpose: to keep his small ranch alive and to wait for the arrival of the woman he had chosen from Earth, his mail-order bride. The letters from the matchmaking agency had been careful, polite, and promising. She was described as gentle, kind, and skilled in domestic life. Jonas had imagined her as someone delicate and soft, a person who could bring warmth to his cold and dusty home. He had imagined laughter by the fire, the smell of home-cooked meals, and the comfort of human company. The wind shifted, carrying with it the distant sound of wheels crunching over the Martian dirt. Jonas's head jerked up. There, on the horizon, was the slow but steady approach of a wagon. Dust clouds trailed behind it like a ribbon. His heart skipped a beat. Today was the day. He stood and walked down the creaking porch steps, squinting against the harsh sunlight. The wagon drew closer, and with it, the figure of the person who was to change his life. Jonas felt a nervous excitement rise inside him. He had prepared the cabin, polished the floors, and even tried to grow a few extra vegetables to impress her. As the wagon rolled to a stop, Jonas noticed something that made him freeze in place. The figure stepping down was not at all what he had expected. She was enormous. Jonas blinked, rubbed his eyes, and looked again. The woman who climbed down from the wagon towered over him. She was at least twice his size, her movements confident and strong. Her hands gripped the wooden rails of the wagon as if they were nothing more than twigs. Her boots, heavy and well-worn, crunched the Martian soil with each step, and her shoulders were broad beneath a sturdy exosuit that glinted in the sunlight. Jonas's mind raced. "This can't be right," he muttered under his breath. His heart pounded in a mixture of fear and curiosity. The letters had said nothing about this. He had imagined a small, delicate woman, someone he could wrap his arms around. Instead, this was a person who looked capable of lifting him without effort. And yet, there was something familiar in her expression. She smiled, a warm, calm smile that reached her eyes. It was not a smile of mockery, nor one of danger. It was the smile of someone who belonged, who knew where she was meant to be. "Jonas?" the woman's voice called, deep and steady. "Are you Jonas, the rancher?" "Yes, I am," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. His legs felt weak. He stepped closer, trying to gauge if this was a dream. You must be Mora?" "That's right," she said, extending a massive hand. Jonas stared at it for a long moment before shaking it. Her grip was firm but not harsh. It was the kind of grip that spoke of strength, endurance, and reliability. Jonas cleared his throat, trying to find the right words. I wasn't expecting, you're taller than I imagined." His voice trailed off awkwardly. Mora chuckled softly. "I've been told that before. But height isn't everything, is it?" She tilted her head slightly, examining the ranch, the cabin, and the land around them. "This place, it's beautiful." Jonas looked at her, unsure if he should feel relief or embarrassment. I think so. It's harsh, but it grows on you." She smiled again. "I like harsh. It makes you stronger." For the first time in weeks, Jonas laughed. The sound echoed across the plains, mingling with the wind. It was a sound of surprise, of disbelief, and of hope. Mora began to step toward the cabin, moving with surprising grace for her size. Every movement was precise, careful, and deliberate. Jonas noticed the way she scanned the horizon, the way she adjusted her exosuit, and the way her eyes flicked to the distant mountains. There was intelligence there, and confidence, and a kind of courage that only comes from surviving hard conditions. "You've made this place look lived in," she said, her gaze falling on the small garden patches Jonas had managed to grow. "I like that. It means someone cares." Jonas swallowed hard. "I do my best." He paused. "I wasn't sure if you'd like it here. Life on Mars, it's not like Earth." Mara's expression softened. "I don't mind. I came here because I wanted something real, something that challenges me. And I think this is it." Jonas's chest swelled with an unexpected feeling. Relief? Joy? Perhaps a mix of both. He realized that he had been waiting for companionship, for warmth, for someone to share the weight of this lonely frontier. And now, standing before him, was someone who could not only match his strength but also teach him new ways to survive. The settlers from nearby homesteads had begun to gather in the distance. Some had seen the wagon arrive and were curious about the newcomer. Whispers traveled across the plains. Who is she? She's huge! Can she really help? Jonas noticed their looks, some filled with skepticism, others with awe. He felt a twinge of worry. Perhaps they would judge her, or him, for accepting someone so different. But Mara seemed unfazed. She waved to the settlers, her smile never fading. "Hello," she called. "I'm here to help." Jonas felt a surge of pride. Somehow, despite the whispers and the doubts, he knew that Mara belonged here. Her strength, her courage, her presence, they were exactly what this harsh land needed. Perhaps more than he had realized, he needed her too. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the plains. Jonas led Mara to the cabin, opening the door and stepping aside for her to enter. The cabin was small, simple, and sturdy. The air smelled faintly of dust, metal, and dried herbs he had tried to grow. "This will be your room," Jonas said, motioning to a corner where a bed and a small chest waited. Mara nodded, examining it. "It's perfect," she said. "Simple, honest, just like I like it." Jonas felt a warmth spread through him. It was not just from her words, but from the realization that he was no longer alone. This towering woman, so different from what he had expected, had brought with her a kind of hope he had not felt in years. Outside, the wind howled across the Martian plains. Dust whipped around the cabin, rattling the windows. But inside, the air felt calmer, safer. For the first time, Jonas allowed himself to imagine life not as a lonely struggle, but as a shared adventure. Mara helped him carry supplies from the wagon. She lifted heavy crates without strain, rearranging them with efficiency and care. Jonas watched, fascinated. He had never met anyone like her. Her strength was impressive, but it was her intelligence, her careful observation, and her calm decisiveness that truly amazed him. By evening, the cabin was settled. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the small room. Jonas and Mora sat across from each other, sharing a simple meal of dried meats and bread. Conversation flowed easily, full of stories about Earth, about Mars, and about the challenges they had faced to reach this point. Jonas realized something important. Mara was not just a bride, she was a partner, a comrade, a human being who could share the hardships and joys of frontier life. She was, in every way that mattered, exactly what he needed. As the twin moons rose in the sky, casting a silvery light across the plains, Jonas sat back and watched Mora clean up after their meal. She moved with purpose, care, and strength. She had not come to fit a mold, but to create her own place in this harsh world. And Jonas felt a deep, undeniable respect for her. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to hope. Mars was a tough place, and life here was harder than anything he had faced. But with Mara by his side, he knew they could face whatever came next, together. Outside, the wind continued to howl, but inside, the cabin was warm, alive, and filled with the quiet promise of a new beginning. The next morning, the Martian sun rose slowly over the plains, painting everything in shades of gold and red. Jonas woke to the quiet hum of the wind and the distant clatter of tools. He stepped outside the cabin and saw Mora already hard at work. She was moving with an energy he had never seen in anyone before. With ease, she was lifting heavy crates from the wagon and stacking them neatly against the cabin wall. Jonas scratched his head. He had expected her to need guidance, to need help adjusting to life on Mars. Instead, she seemed to adapt naturally, as if the harsh environment itself had trained her. Her exosuit gleamed under the sunlight, reflecting not only strength but also a careful intelligence. Every movement was calculated and precise. "Good morning," Jonas called, walking toward her. Mora looked up and smiled. "Good morning. I thought I'd start with the supplies. This land doesn't wait for anyone." Jonas nodded. "You're right. It's tough. Strong winds, rough soil, and don't get me started on the storms." Mara laughed, a deep, clear sound that bounced across the plains. "Storms don't scare me. I've faced worse." Jonas couldn't help but feel a mixture of admiration and nervousness. He had imagined someone delicate and soft. Instead, he had someone strong, fearless, and capable of bending Mars itself to her will. After organizing the supplies, Mara turned her attention to the ranch. The livestock, a small herd of genetically modified cows and goats, were huddled in their pens. Jonas noticed that the fences were old and weak. He had been meaning to repair them but never got around to it. "I can help with the fences," Mora said. If they break, your herd won't survive the next storm. Jonas hesitated. I wasn't expecting help. I mean, it's dangerous work. You might get hurt. She shook her head. I'll be careful. Don't underestimate humans. Jonas felt a jolt. Humans? He repeated. Yes, she said, smiling. We're tougher than most people think. We adapt. We survive. And we protect what matters. Jonas nodded slowly, feeling a surge of respect. There was something about Mora's words that felt like a promise, a challenge, and an inspiration all at once. Together, they began repairing the fences. Mora lifted heavy wooden beams with ease, positioning them perfectly. Jonas hammered and tied, trying to keep up with her energy. As they worked, Jonas noticed how settlers from nearby colonies were gathering at a distance, watching the tall woman. Some whispered in disbelief. Others shook their heads, unsure what to make of her. Jonas felt a flicker of unease. They might think it's strange, you being so big, he said quietly. Mora laughed again. Strange is only a word. What matters is what we do, not what people think. He watched her for a long moment. Her strength was obvious, but her confidence and calmness impressed him more. She was not trying to show off or scare anyone. She was here to work, to survive, and to help. As the sun climbed higher, a sudden warning siren echoed across the plains. Jonas's heart jumped. The sound meant trouble, raiders, storms, or wild animals. But there was no sign of panic in Mora. She immediately scanned the horizon, her sharp eyes catching movement in the distance. Raiders, she said simply. Jonas froze. He had faced raiders before, but not like this. They were smarter, faster, and better equipped. Most settlers had given up hope of resisting them, but Mora didn't flinch. They think they can take what isn't theirs, she said. Let's show them humans can fight back. Jonas nodded, trying to match her confidence. I don't know if I can fight them alone. You won't be alone, Mora said firmly. We fight together. The raiders arrived swiftly, their hover vehicles kicking up red dust. They were armed with high-tech weapons, scanning the plains for easy targets. Jonas and Mora stood side by side, watching them approach. Jonas felt fear rising, but also a strange excitement. This was a test, not just of strength but of ingenuity and courage. Mora turned to him. Follow my lead, she said. Using the terrain to their advantage, they lured the raiders toward a narrow canyon near the ranch. Mora's knowledge of engineering came into play as she rigged simple traps using the supplies and tools they had. Heavy beams fell, nets trapped hover drones, and strategically placed pits forced the raiders to slow down. Jonas watched in amazement. She was using intelligence, strategy, and raw human strength together, a combination he had never witnessed before. The raiders hesitated, confused by the unexpected obstacles. Jonas seized the moment, guiding the livestock into a safer area and reinforcing the pens. He realized that Mora's presence gave him not only safety, but also the confidence to act quickly. When the raiders finally broke through the first line of traps, they were met by Mora herself. She stood tall, her exosuit gleaming in the sunlight. One by one, she disarmed them, using precision and strength. Jonas joined, using clever distractions and timing to push them back. The settlers watched in awe. A woman twice the size of a normal human, and a lone rancher were holding off technologically superior raiders, with nothing but brains, courage, and determination. It was a sight that none of them would ever forget. After hours of tense struggle, the raiders finally retreated. Their vehicle sputtered, their morale broken. Jonas and Mora stood among the dust and debris, breathing heavily but triumphant. The settlers slowly approached, their skepticism replaced with respect. Who is she? One of them asked. She's human, Jonas said simply. And so am I. That's all that matters. Mora smiled at the settlers. Humans are stronger than they seem. We adapt, we survive, and we protect what matters. Jonas felt a deep sense of pride. He had doubted her, feared her, and even worried about what the settlers would think. But now he knew. Together they were unstoppable. Mars was harsh, unforgiving, and lonely. But it was also a place where human courage and intelligence could shine. The rest of the day passed quietly. Jonas and Mara repaired what had been damaged during the raid. The livestock were safe, the fences reinforced, and the ranch returned to order. They worked side by side, their movements coordinated, almost instinctively. Jonas noticed the way Mara observed everything. The patterns of the wind, the weaknesses in the terrain, and even the habits of the livestock. She was not just strong, she was brilliant. And for the first time, Jonas felt that perhaps he had underestimated humans in general, and her in particular. As the twin moons rose in the sky, The ranch was quiet again. The settlers returned to their homes, still whispering about the tall woman who had defended the frontier with a lone rancher. Jonas sat on the porch, looking at Mora, who was cleaning and organizing the tools. "You were amazing today," he said quietly. She shrugged, smiling. "I did what anyone should do. Protect what matters. But you were brave too. You didn't freeze. You acted. That matters just as much as strength." Jonas smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. I think I understand now. It's not about being big or small. It's about using your mind, your courage, and your heart." Mora nodded. "Exactly. That's what makes humans special. We survive because we can think, we can adapt, and we can care." Jonas felt a new sense of hope. The frontier was harsh, the threats were real, but he was no longer alone. With Mora, he could face anything. She had come to Mars not just as a partner, but as a teacher, a comrade, and a reminder that humans, when they truly work together, were capable of greatness. As they sat together under the moons, the wind howling outside, Jonas realized something profound. Life on Mars was tough, but so were they. And for the first time, he felt ready to face the future, no matter what it held. The night passed quietly, but Jonas knew that more challenges were coming. There would be storms, more raiders, and countless obstacles on this harsh red planet. But he also knew that with Mora by his side, they could overcome anything. Humans were not just survivors, they were innovators, fighters, and dreamers. And together, they would prove it again and again. For now, the ranch was safe. For now, they had survived. And for Jonas, that was enough to keep hope alive. The Martian plains were quiet in the early morning, but the calm was deceptive. Jonas woke to the sound of distant thuds and whirs, machines moving across the horizon. His stomach tightened. The raiders from the previous day were returning, and this time they were larger in number and more prepared. Jonas looked out across the red desert and saw the hover vehicles cutting through the dust like dark shadows. He felt a surge of fear, but it was quickly replaced by determination. This was not just about defending the ranch anymore, it was about proving that humans, even alone on this harsh planet, could stand against anything. Mora stepped onto the porch, her towering figure framed against the rising sun. Her eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and calculating. She did not speak at first. Her silence was enough to show that she was already thinking of a plan. "They're coming back," Jonas said, his voice steady. Mora nodded. "I see that. And this time they think they can take more. They are wrong." Jonas swallowed hard. "We'll need more than traps this time. They're stronger, smarter." Mora's lips curved into a confident smile. "Then we'll be smarter too." She had already started inspecting the ranch. Jonas watched as she moved quickly from the pens to the barn, her exosuit glinting in the sunlight. Her strength was obvious, but it was her mind that impressed him the most. She checked weak points, reinforced structures, and began organizing the tools and supplies. Every movement was deliberate, every action had a purpose. Jonas felt a deep sense of admiration. He had always been a capable rancher, but Mora's presence reminded him that humans were capable of more than he had imagined. Her combination of strength, intelligence, and courage inspired him. By mid-morning, the raiders were closer. Their hover vehicles kicked up clouds of red dust as they approached. Jonas could see their weapons glinting, their teams organized and ready. The settlers from nearby colonies watched from a distance, unsure whether to intervene or flee. Mara turned to Jonas. "We'll need a plan. Not just strength, not just courage, but strategy. That's what humans do best." Jonas nodded. "What do you suggest?" She pointed toward the rocky canyon nearby. "So, observers said, we lure them here. The terrain is narrow, it limits their vehicles. We set traps, but smarter ones this time. And we use what we have, every tool, every animal, every trick we know." Jonas felt his pulse quicken. It was a risky plan, but it made sense. "I'll follow your lead." Mora smiled. "Good. Stay calm, think clearly, and act fast." Together, they began preparing. They dug small pits covered with Martian soil, ready to trip the hover vehicles. They reinforced rocks at sharp angles, creating natural barriers that could slow the raiders. Mara even modified a few drones to act as decoys, making it seem like the ranch was larger and better defended than it really was. Jonas worked tirelessly beside her. For the first time, he felt the true power of human collaboration. His strength alone was not enough, and neither was Mora's, but together they formed a force that was both clever and resilient. As the raiders drew closer, Jonas's heart pounded. Dust swirled in the air, and the sound of engines filled the silence. He glanced at Mora. She stood tall, confident, ready. "We can do this," she said, her voice calm but firm. The first vehicles entered the canyon. Immediately, Mara's traps went into action. Pits opened beneath their tires, nets entangled some of the machines, and rocks shifted to block others. Jonas's clever distractions guided the livestock through hidden paths, confusing the raiders further. The raiders were clever, adapting quickly. They fired weapons and tried to move around the obstacles. But Mora anticipated every move. She jumped down from high rocks, disarming raiders and redirecting their attention. Jonas coordinated with the animals, using them to block pathways and slow the attackers. The settlers watched in awe. 2 humans, alone on the Martian frontier, were holding back an army. It was a sight they would never forget. Courage, intelligence, and teamwork proved more powerful than technology in numbers. Jonas realized something profound. It was not Mora's size or his knowledge of the land that won the battle. It was their ability to think, adapt, and act together. Humans were not the strongest creatures in the universe, but they were the smartest, the most creative, and the most determined. Hours passed, and the battle continued. The canyon echoed with shouts, the rumble of hover vehicles, and the crash of falling rocks. Dust filled the air, making it hard to see. Jonas and Mora moved seamlessly, covering each other's weaknesses and amplifying each other's strengths. Finally, the raiders began to retreat. Their vehicles were damaged, their morale broken. They realized that brute force alone could not overcome humans who were determined, smart, and united. Jonas and Mora stood at the canyon's edge, breathing heavily, covered in dust but victorious. The settlers approached slowly, unsure whether to cheer or simply stare in awe. You did it," one of them said finally. Mara shook her head. "We did it. Humans did it." Jonas felt a swelling pride. This victory was not just theirs, it was a reminder that humanity, no matter how small or alone it seemed, could overcome incredible odds. As the dust settled, Jonas and Mora returned to They checked the livestock, repaired fences, and organized the supplies again. There was no celebration yet. Mars was a harsh place, and they knew more challenges were coming. But for the first time, Jonas felt truly confident in their ability to face them. That night, the twin moons rose over the plains. Jonas sat on the porch, watching Mora move inside the cabin, cleaning and preparing for the next day. She was silent, focused, yet there was a sense of calm strength about her that reassured him. "You were incredible today," Jonas said quietly. Mara looked at him, her eyes shining. "You too. You didn't panic. You thought, you acted, you adapted. That's what makes humans powerful. Not strength alone, not technology alone, but the ability to use everything we have, mind, body, and heart, together." Jonas nodded slowly. He realized that her words were true. Mars was a harsh and lonely place, but it was also a place where humans could shine. Intelligence, courage, and teamwork could overcome even the toughest challenges. He felt a sense of connection to Mora deeper than he had ever imagined. She was not just a partner, she was a teacher, showing him the true potential of humans. He understood now that it was not just about surviving. It was about thriving, about using every advantage, every skill, and every ounce of determination to create something greater than themselves. The settlers, who had once doubted them, now looked at Jonas and Mora with respect. They saw not just two people, but a demonstration of human potential: strength, courage, intelligence, and determination. These were the tools that allowed humans to succeed where others failed. Jonas felt a new hope rising within him. He had feared the future, feared the harshness of Mars, and feared being alone. But now, with Mora by his side, he knew that anything was possible. Together they could face storms, raiders, and any challenge the frontier threw at them. As the night deepened, Jonas reflected on the day. This victory was more than a defense of the ranch. It was proof that humans, when united and determined, were a force to be reckoned with. He had always believed in hard work, in persistence, and in the power of the mind. Now, seeing Mora's strength combined with his own, he knew that humans were capable of greatness beyond imagination. He looked at Mora again. She was quiet, thoughtful, yet her presence filled the room with calm strength. Jonas realized that this partnership was the key to survival and success on Mars. Together, they were unstoppable. And on the plains outside, under the twin moons, Jonas knew that this was only the beginning. Mars was a harsh world, but it was also a place where humans could prove themselves. And he and Mora were ready to do just that. Side by side, stronger together, and unstoppable in their determination. The red dust of Mars swirled outside, but inside the cabin, there was warmth, hope, and the quiet power of human ingenuity. Jonas smiled. The frontier was tough, but he and Mora were tougher. And as the twin moons shone down on them, he felt a deep, unshakable certainty. Humanity would not just survive on this planet, they would thrive. The Martian sun rose slowly over the plains, casting long shadows across the red soil. Jonas stepped out of the cabin, breathing in the dry, crisp air. The dust storms of yesterday were gone, leaving the land calm and quiet. For the first time in weeks, the ranch felt peaceful. Not empty, not lonely, but alive, full of promise and potential. Mora was already outside, inspecting the livestock. Her towering figure moved with grace and purpose, her exosuit glinting in the sunlight. Jonas watched her for a moment, feeling a mixture of admiration and gratitude. She had arrived as a stranger, twice the size of anyone he had imagined, but she had become far more than he expected. She was his partner, his comrade, and the spark of hope for their small Martian frontier. The settlers from nearby homesteads had gathered at a safe distance, curious to see how the ranchers were faring after the raids. Some approached cautiously, carrying tools and supplies. Others brought food or shared advice from their own experiences on Mars. Slowly, the once isolated ranch began to feel like a small community, brought together by the courage and ingenuity of two humans who refused to be defeated. Jonas walked to Mora. "How are the livestock?" he asked. "They're fine," Mora replied. "Stronger than I expected. You've done a good job caring for them." Jonas nodded, feeling a swell of pride. "And you've been incredible. Without you, none of this would have survived." Mara smiled, brushing a hand over the fence posts to ensure they were secure. "We did this together. Strength alone isn't enough. Planning, teamwork, courage. That's what saves lives." Jonas realized how true her words were. The frontier on Mars was harsh, unforgiving, and often deadly. The storms, the dust, and the raiders were constant threats. Yet humans, with their intelligence, adaptability, and determination, had the power to overcome them. Strength mattered, yes, but it was the combination of mind, heart, and courage that allowed survival and success. The settlers were beginning to take notice. One by one, they approached, offering to help reinforce the ranch, plant new crops, and repair damaged equipment. Jonas welcomed them warmly, feeling a sense of purpose that had been missing for so long. Mora's presence had inspired more than just him. It had inspired everyone who witnessed their determination. As the day passed, Jonas and Mora worked side by side, teaching the settlers how to build stronger fences, manage livestock, and prepare for the harsh Martian conditions. The settlers watched and learned, realizing that survival here was not about fear or isolation. It was about courage, ingenuity, and cooperation. By mid-afternoon, the work was nearly complete. The ranch was stronger than ever, the livestock secure, and the settlers more confident than they had been before. Jonas paused for a moment, surveying the land. It was rough, wild, and dangerous, but it was theirs. And together, humans could make it thrive. Mara turned to him, her eyes bright with excitement. "Do you see it?" she asked. Jonas shook his head. "See what?" "The potential. Mars is harsh, yes, but it's also full of opportunity. We can survive here. We can grow, expand, and protect what we build. Humans can do more than we think if we just try." Jonas smiled, finally understanding the depth of her words. She had not come to the frontier as someone weak or fragile. She had come to show that humans, together, could face impossible odds and succeed. As the settlers began to leave for the evening, grateful for the lessons and the protection, Jonas and Mora stood on the porch, watching the twin moons rise over the plains. The light was pale and silvery, reflecting off the red dust and casting a gentle glow on the ranch. "You know," Jonas said quietly, "I used to think surviving here was enough. Just keeping the ranch going, staying alive, that was all I wanted." Mora looked at him, waiting. "Now I see it's more than that," he continued. "It's about thriving. It's about showing what humans can do. You've reminded me of that." Mora's smile widened. Humans are incredible when they work together. Strength, courage, intelligence, they all matter. And when combined, there's nothing we can't overcome. Jonas felt a surge of hope. The frontier on Mars was tough, but he was no longer alone. With Mora, he had a partner who could teach, guide, and inspire. Together, they could face storms, raiders, and any challenge the planet threw at them. Days turned into weeks, and the ranch flourished. Crops began to grow steadily, livestock multiplied, and the settlers nearby formed a small, thriving community. Jonas and Mora led by example, teaching, helping, and protecting. Every obstacle was met with intelligence and courage. Every challenge became an opportunity to prove human potential. Word of their success spread across the frontier. Travelers and traders spoke of the tall woman and the lone rancher who had faced the raiders and survived. Their story became a symbol of hope for everyone struggling on Mars. People began to arrive, eager to learn, to join, or simply to witness the strength of humans united. Jonas watched as children from nearby homesteads ran through the ranch, laughing and playing, unafraid of the harsh landscape. He thought of the hardships he had endured alone and realized how far they had come. The frontier, once lonely and dangerous, had transformed into a place of learning, growth, and community. One evening, as the twin moons rose again, Jonas and Maura sat on the porch, watching the stars glitter across the Martian sky. The wind whispered through the plains, carrying the faint scent of dust and vegetation. "You know," Jonas said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I never imagined life could be like this. I thought survival was all we could hope for." Maura nodded. "Survival is only the beginning. Humans are capable of more. We adapt, we innovate, we inspire. And when we work together, there's nothing we can't achieve." Jonas felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had doubted the future, feared the harshness of Mars, and worried about being alone. But now, with Maura by his side, he knew that anything was possible. Together, they could face the storms, the dust, and any threat that came their way. "Thank you," Jonas said softly. "For what?" Maura asked, smiling. "For showing me the true power of humans, for showing me hope, for being you." Maura reached out and took his hand, her grip strong but gentle. "And thank you, Jonas, for trusting me, for working together, for believing in what humans can do." The twin moons shone brightly above, casting a gentle silver light across the plains. The wind continued to whisper, but inside the cabin and on the ranch, there was warmth, laughter, and life. The frontier was no longer a place of fear or loneliness. It was a place of opportunity, courage, and the undeniable proof of human potential. Jonas and Maura looked out over the land they had worked so hard to protect and build. It was rough, wild, and unforgiving, but it was theirs. And, with the settlers they had inspired, they knew they were not just surviving, they were creating a legacy. "Do you think we'll be remembered?" Jonas asked quietly. Maura laughed softly. "Perhaps, but it doesn't matter. What matters is what we do today, what we teach, and what we leave behind for those who follow. That is the true legacy of humans." Jonas nodded, understanding. Humans had survived the harshest environments, faced impossible odds, and yet continued to rise. Their strength, intelligence, courage, and compassion were what made them extraordinary. And now, on the plains of Mars, that legacy was alive and growing stronger every day. As the stars sparkled above and the twin moons shone over the red soil, Jonas realized something powerful. Life on Mars was harsh, unpredictable, and challenging. But humanity, when united, was unstoppable. Strength alone was not enough. Intelligence, courage, and heart were equally vital. And with Maura by his side, he knew that they could face anything. The ranch was more than a home. It was a symbol. It was proof that humans could adapt, survive, and thrive, even in the harshest conditions. And Jonas and Maura were living proof of that. For now, the frontier was quiet. But Jonas knew that challenges would come again. Storms, raiders, and the unforgiving landscape would continue to test them. But he also knew that with courage, intelligence, and unity, humans could meet every challenge. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the sound of life, hope, and determination. Jonas and Maura sat together on the porch, watching the twin moons rise. The red dust of Mars shimmered in the moonlight, a reminder of the hardships they had overcome and the future they were building. And for the first time, Jonas felt certain of one thing. Humanity would not just survive on Mars. They would thrive, leaving a legacy that no storm, no raider, and no harsh land could ever erase.